It is not so long since slavery was defended as necessary for economic progress. To denounce slavery was regarded as an attack on the very heart of free enterprise. This line of argument has a chilling similarity to our present day. The proposal to replace income and indirect taxes with a tax on land values is likewise accused of being an attack on capitalism itself. How is it that so many classical economists and thinkers, people like Adam Smith, David Ricardo, and John Stuart Mill, all saw the special nature of land and its rent? It was George Bernard Shaw who said, "The land question is so fundamental that if we go wrong on it, everything else will go wrong automatically." The theory of land value taxation was articulated and popularized by the American economist Henry George. His eloquent arguments for tax reform, free trade, and the abolition of poverty were revolutionary ideas for revolutionary times. They grew out of the ferment of the Industrial Revolution that in the 19th century saw the death of the old world and the birth of the new. Transformed from agricultural to urban societies, the juxtaposition of wealth and poverty had never seemed more extreme. Born in Philadelphia in 1839, Henry George was nurtured in a very religious home, and his faith remained a driving force for the rest of his life. At the age of 30, he moved to New York, where he was horrified by the poverty he saw. From that time on, he vowed to find an answer to the problem of, as he put it, the increase of want with the increase of wealth. The fruit of his search was to write Progress and Poverty, published in 1879, at a time of economic crisis and industrial strife. The book received a sensational response, selling millions of copies across America, England, Europe, Russia, and China. It is said to be the all-time bestseller on economics. Progress and Poverty won Henry George instant fame, and he was invited to conduct lecture tours all around the world. He came to Australia in 1890 and was enthusiastically received wherever he spoke, in both city and rural areas. The ideas of Henry George are revolutionary, but have little in common with Marxism, which, as the 20th century has borne out, often seems to endanger the liberties of humankind. There is no place for violent revolution in the Georgist philosophy. It is not Marxist, yet it is indeed revolutionary. This is why it is sometimes called the Third Way. The great 19th century Russian writer Leo Tolstoy said of Henry George's ideas, "People do not argue with the teaching of George, they simply do not know it. The teaching of George is irresistibly convincing in its simplicity and clearness. He who becomes acquainted with it cannot but agree." The present century has been marked by a prodigious increase in wealth-producing power. At the beginning of this marvelous era, it was natural to expect, and it was expected, that labor-saving inventions would lighten the toil and improve the conditions of the laborer. That the enormous increase in the power of producing wealth would make real poverty a thing of the past. Now, however, we are coming into collision with facts which there can be no mistaking. In the United States, it is clear that squalor and misery and the vices and crimes that spring from them everywhere increase as the village grows to the city, and the march of development brings the advantages of the improved methods of production and exchange. This association of poverty with progress is the great enigma of our times. It is the central fact from which spring industrial, social, and political difficulties that perplex the world, and with which statesmanship and philanthropy and education grapple in vain. It is the riddle which the Sphinx of Fate puts to our civilization, and which not to answer is to be destroyed. Land monopoly is not the only monopoly which exists.
but it is by far the greatest of all monopolies. It is a perpetual monopoly, and it is the mother of all other forms of monopoly.
As we said earlier, it is not so long ago that slavery was defended as vital to economic progress. The same groups in society who then thought that they had the unquestionable right to own and control other human beings still believe today they have the same rights of abuse over the land. The push for land value taxation is not about hatred or violent revolution, but it is a fundamental structural change that must be achieved if we want prosperity and peace.
In our time, as in times before, creep on the insidious forces that in producing inequality destroy liberty. On the horizon, the clouds begin to lower. Liberty calls to us again. It is not enough that men should vote. It is not enough that they should be theoretically equal before the law. They must have liberty to avail themselves of the opportunities and means of life. They must stand on equal terms with reference to the bounty of nature. This is the universal law. It is the lesson of the centuries. Unless its foundations be laid in justice, the social structure cannot stand.